Hello. 1 second here. Get my light ready. All right. So today we are going to go over Unit 7 for this week 3. All right. So we're going to start out with the Victorian era 1, which is the first tutorial. So let's get that opened up. All right, so this really focuses on the Victorian era, that period of time in history. And then we get some information about one of the most famous authors or poets, Alfred Lord Tennyson. And then there's a little bit of information that you might need to know throughout the tutorial to help you understand these poems. But what we are going to do is we're going to read through a couple of his poems. I found readings of them. So we're going to listen to them with the text on screen. It's just a little bit more helpful that way. So we're going to read through Ulysses and look for the way that Ulysses is characterized and how does that characterization reflect Victorian ideals. So you'll need to understand the history of the Victorian era. What is the overall tone of The Lady of Shalott, and how does Tennyson convey this tone? What is the point of climax in the poem The Lady of Shalott, and how does the poem's structure affect the poem? Like, how does putting the climax where it does affect the rest of the poem? And then compare and contrast the themes of Ulysses and The Lady of Shalott, and analyze how the poet incorporates Victorian ideals and themes. So let me make sure that I don't have the readings. Let me get okay. There we go. All right.
Ulysses by Alfred Lord Tennyson. It little profits that an idle king by this still hearth among these barren crags, matched with an aged wife, I meet and dole unequal laws unto a savage race that hoard and sleep and feed and know not me. I cannot rest from travel, I will drink life to the lees. All times I have enjoyed greatly, have suffered greatly, both with those that loved me and alone, on shore, and when, through scudding drifts, the rainy Hyades vexed the dim sea. I am become a name, for always roaming with a hungry heart. Much have I seen and known, cities of men, and manners, climates, councils, governments, myself not least, but honored of them all, and drunk delight of battle with my peers far on the ringing plains of windy Troy. I am a part of all that I have met, yet all experience is an arch wherethrough gleams that untravelled world whose margin fades forever and forever when I move. How dull it is to pause, to make an end, to rust unburnished, not to shine in use, as though to breathe were life, life piled on life, were all too little, and of one to me little remains. But every hour is saved from that eternal silence, something more, a bringer of new things, and vile it were for some 3 suns to store and hoard myself, and this grey spirit yearning in desire to follow knowledge like a sinking star beyond the utmost bound of human thought. This is my son, mine own Telemachus, to whom I leave the sceptre and the isle, well loved of me, discerning to fulfill this labor, by slow prudence to make mild a rugged people, and through softer degrees subdue them to the useful and the good. Most blameless is he, centered in the sphere of common duties, decent not to fail in offices of tenderness, and pay meet adoration to my household gods when I am gone. He works his work, I mine. There lies the port, the vessel puffs her sail, There gloom the dark broad seas. My mariners, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me, that ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and the sunshine, and opposed free hearts, free foreheads. You and I are old. Old age hath yet his honour and his toil. Death closes all, but something ere the end, some work of noble note may yet be done, not unbecoming men that strove with gods. The lights begin to twinkle from the rocks, the long day wanes, the slow moon climbs, the deep moans round with many voices. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off, and sitting well in order smite the sounding furrows, for my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down. It may be we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles whom we knew. Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield.
All right. So, how is Ulysses characterized? So, something that I want to make sure that you know is that this is based off of the Odyssey slash Iliad, sort of written by Homer about Ulysses or Odysseus, depending on if you're reading the Latin or the Greek version. So he is a hero. Oops, and he is pretty much described as that. So he's described as like this older king. He cannot rest from travel. He's feeling like, I have to keep going, I have to do stuff. I've been through all of these adventures. So he's really described as this hero who is super adventurous and has done all of these like wild things. He's a warrior. And he should be retired, but he's restless. He wants to continue to go on all of these adventures. And so, yeah, that's just how he's described. And then as far as reflecting Victorian ideals, you really get that at the very end here. Made weak by time and fate, but strong in will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. This is really the idea of Victorian era. Even though, like, no matter what happens, I still have to be able to work hard. And, like, that's really just the purpose of life, is to work hard. So hopefully that gives you some of that information here for part A. Okay, so part B, what is the overall tone of Lady of Shalott? So we're going to be looking for that as well as the point of climax in the poem. So play this one.
The Lady of Shalott by Alfred Lord Tennyson. On either side the river lie long fields of barley and of rye, that clothe the wold and meet the sky, and through the field the road runs by to many-towered Camelot, and down the people go, gazing where the lilies blow, round an island there below, the island of Shalott. Willows whiten, aspens quiver, little breezes dusk and shiver, through the wave that runs forever, by the island in the river, flowing down to Camelot. 4 grey walls and 4 grey towers overlook a space of flowers, and the silent isle embowers the Lady of Shalott. By the margin, willow-veiled, slide the heavy barges trailed by slow horses and unhailed, the shallop flitteth silken-sailed, skimming down to Camelot. And who hath seen her wave her hand, or at the casement seen her stand? Or is she known in all the land, the Lady of Shalott? Only reapers reaping early, in among the bearded barley, hear a song that echoes cheerly from the river winding clearly, down to towered Camelot. And by the moon the reaper weary, piling sheaves in uplands airy, listening, whispers, 'tis the fairy, the Lady of Shalott. There she weaves by night and day, a magic web with colours gay, She has heard a whisper say, a curse is on her if she stay to look down to Camelot. She knows not what the curse may be, and so she weaveth steadily, and little other care hath she, the Lady of Shalott. And moving through a mirror clear, there hangs before her all the year, shadows of the world appear. There she sees the highway near, winding down to Camelot. There the river eddy whirls, there the surly village churls, and the red cloaks of market girls pass onward from Shalott. Sometimes a troop of damsels glad, an abbot on an ambling pad, sometimes a curly shepherd lad, or a long-haired page in crimson clad, goes by to towered Camelot, and sometimes through the mirror blue the knights come riding two and two. She hath no loyal knight and true, the Lady of Shalott. But in her web she still delights to weave the mirror's magic sleights. For often through the silent nights a funeral with plumes and lights and music went to Camelot. And when the moon was overhead, came two lovers lately wed. I am half sick of shadows, said the Lady of Shalott. A bowshot from her bower eaves, he rode between the barley sheaves. The sun came dazzling through the leaves, and flamed upon the brazen greaves of bold Sir Lancelot. A red-crossed knight forever kneeled to a lady in his shield that sparkled on the yellow field beside remote Shalott. The gemmy bridle glittered free, like to some branch of stars we see, hung in the golden galaxy. The bridle bells rang merrily as he rode down to Camelot, and from his blazoned baldric slung a mighty silver bugle hung, and as he rose his armour rung beside remote Shalott. All in the blue and clouded weather, thick jewels shone the saddle leather, the helmet and the helmet feather burned like one burning flame together as he rode down to Camelot. As often through the purple night, below the starry clusters bright, some bearded meteor, burning bright, moves over still Shalott. His broad, clear brow in sunlight glowed, on burnished hooves his war-horse trode. From underneath his helmet flowed his coal-black curls as on he rode down to Camelot. From the bank and from the river he flashed into the crystal mirror. Tirra lirra by the river sang Sir Lancelot. She left the web, she left the loom. She made 3 paces through the room. She saw the water lily bloom. She saw the helmet and the plume as she looked down to Camelot. Out flew the web and floated wide. The mirror cracked from side to side. The curse is come upon me, cried the Lady of Shalott. In the stormy east wind straining, the pale yellow woods were waning, the broad stream in his banks complaining, heavily the low sky raining, over-towered Camelot. Down she came and found a boat, beneath a willow left afloat, and around the prow she wrote, the Lady of Shalott. And down the river's dim expanse, like some bull seer in a trance, seeing all his own mischance, with a glassy countenance did she look to Camelot. And at the closing of the day she loosed the chain, and down she lay. The broad stream bore her far away, the Lady of Shalott. Lying robed in snowy white, that loosely flew to left and right, the leaves upon her falling light, through the noises of the night, she floated down to Camelot. And as the boat head wound along, the willowy hills and fields among, they heard her singing her last song, the Lady of Shalott. Heard a carol, mournful, holy, chanted loudly, chanted lowly, till her blood was frozen slowly, and her eyes were dark and holy, turned to towered Camelot. For ere she reached upon the tide, the first house by the water side, singing in her song she died, the Lady of Shalott. Under tower and balcony, by garden wall and gallery, a gleaming shape she floated by, dead pale between houses high, silent unto Camelot. Out upon the wharves they came, knight and burgher, lord and dame, and around the prow they read her name, the Lady of Shalott. Who is this, and what is here? In the lighted palace near, died the sound of royal cheer, and they crossed themselves for fear, all the knights at Camelot. But Lancelot mused a little space. He said, she has a lovely face. God in his mercy lend her grace, the Lady of Shalott.
All right. So, just like a quick summary here, this poem is about this Lady of Shalott, and she's doomed and cursed, and she has to live in this tower. And if she leaves the tower, she dies. And she can't even look at any beauty directly. She has to look at it through this mirror. So with that tone, the tone is pretty sad. It's like why, and it's also mysterious because we don't know why she's stuck in this tower. So it's sad because you're like, wow, like she's just stuck there and she has this like really super sheltered life. So he conveys this tone by telling us about her about her situation, just like the way that she lives, and then through his description of everything that she cannot see, and then always coming back to like her life situation is how he conveys it. The point of climax in the poem is when she sees Sir Lancelot, and because we know that she can only look through stuff in the mirror. And as far as the way that this affects the structure of the poem is the pace sort of increases, and you get this sort of like feeling of like, oh, what's happening next? What's coming? Oh my goodness. And it kind of continues from there because you know, like, oh, well, she did this thing, right? And like she sees him, and then yeah, she goes and she sees it, and then she's like, oh no, like I saw like curses come upon me. And then it starts getting like, oh, so what's going to happen? So it kind of moves it through all of that. Okay. And if we compare and contrast the themes of Ulysses and the Lady of Shalott, so Ulysses is more about this idea of the pursuit of knowledge, and all of his adventures and everything that he did, and his eventful life and all of his challenges, whereas the Lady of Shalott has no life at all. She is doomed and cursed to live in this tower, and um, she's just super isolated, and yeah. Another theme that is really important in the Lady of Shalott is the role of women in Victorian society. She is doomed to just sit there in her home and she's like doing like the weaving, and so she's doomed to that idea of what a woman should do. All right, so that covers the lesson activity for the first tutorial in Unit 7, the Victorian Era 1.